Back is Dorsey to throw. And he throws it in the end zone.
To the races, can they catch it?
The Ohio State of Mind podcast, hosted by Josh Kingdom and Chris Ringler.
All right. It is Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Eastern. What time zone am I in? Western?
I don't know, dude, but no one gives a shit about where Washington is, bro. It's 9 o'clock for normal people, bro.
Buddy, then we need to start thinking about maybe getting these people before bed.
No shit.
I know you don't sit here and act like you don't want to go to bed now. I understand you got a 2-month-old child, but I know you're fucking fighting it right now, correct?
Every day is closer to death. Yep.
Every day closer to death. And this is the Ohio State of Mind podcast. As always, I'm Chris. Josh at the center. Josh, we've got a very special guest. Josh, want to go ahead and introduce this young man?
Yes, Austin and I go way back. This is the third podcast he'll be on where I'm hosting. We actually co-hosted one podcast, so third time's the charm. Yeah. Austin, so I appreciate you coming on. Austin Pfenninger of JL Sports, former the U wide receiver, okay?
Yeah, also, I didn't like that 0-2 clip you guys had in the intro. That's a sore one, man. Congrats on a great season.
That's way before your time, though.
I was young enough to pay attention. I was about 8 years old then.
But you and I were obviously I wasn't good enough to play for the U, and you know, God bless you for having the skills to accomplish and live out your dream. But we do have one thing in common, both PFL alumni, Drake Bulldog.
Yeah. Got my master's there, so had a good time there in Des Moines. And you spent some time in Indiana. I'm from Indy, so commonality there.
Yeah, we are the Crusaders. Obviously, I refuse to call them that pussy new name, the Beacons. Refuse to do it. They're the Crusaders always. But Austin, before we dive in, for those that just are don't know you, they didn't listen to my last 3 podcasts. Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, what you do, where you're at, how you got into it?
Yeah, so I'm currently NFLPA certified contract advisor or agent, also involved on the college side with traditional NIL as well as transfer portal representation and what the current state of business actually looks like. And been a registered NFL agent since 2018. Prior to that, I was a walk-on at the University of Miami and became a letterman at receiver. Former Scout Player of the Year there. Got a couple grad degrees after, and was not talented enough to pursue the next level, but wanted to stay involved in the game. Always loved the contractual side, the business side of the sport, and having a lot of teammates that were able to go pro, being able to pick their brains and kind of see what their process was like when selecting agents and representation. It was just a good way for me to stay involved in the game, be able to review contracts, watch a ton of film, and been doing that for a while now. It goes by fast, but and it's ever changing. It's been probably more changes than most, of the tenured agents have seen, that are kind of older school. Just every year it's been a ton of changes since I got started. So it's been an exciting space to be in.
Yeah, man. And the knowledge that you have in regard to football and the financial aspect of it, just to give everybody some insight, you've dealt with guys representing the NFL, guys who have been drafted, guys who have been undrafted, guys in the UFL, guys in the CFL. I mean, You've made those trips. You've had those. You've told me stories where you've had to have difficult conversations with guys that, hey, weren't good enough for the NFL, but tried to make that transition to the CFL. So, and I think that that's one thing that makes what you do really unique is, guys like, I don't know, Chris, name the big star agent that everybody, the Drew Rosenhauses of the world.
Drew Rosenhaus, yeah.
They're anybody can represent a first round pick. Anybody can represent Shedeur Sanders, but it takes a lot of work to, deal with the guy that, was the third wide receiver at Toledo who got hurt that might have the skills to make it in the CFL or the UFL or the Arena Football League to try and make it to that next level. And I think that that's really cool, and that gives you some unique insight. But before we dive into the questions, Chris, is there anything you wanted to ask? Or
yeah, I mean, I'd want to go a little bit further back, Austin, if you could. I know Josh, you played a little bit of football at the next level. You coming out of high school, what?
Chris freeze up on us, or?
Oh, I think Chris froze on us. Usually it's me, so that makes me feel a little bit better that it was him.
Chris, you back? I think we got him back.
We're good. Yeah, we're good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what was your
Let you
question?
know.
I've got a storm going on outside. No, hey, so I wanted to go a little farther back, if you would. I mean, let's be real. The U is no damn slouch. When you're coming out of high school, what are your dreams and aspirations? Was it always, hey, I wanted to be a part of the U?
Yeah, since I was 7 years old is kind of when I first started really paying attention to college football. From Indianapolis, so we had the Colts growing up, but IU and Purdue weren't doing too much, when I was a kid. So that's kind of when Miami was top dogs, back then. So jumped on the bandwagon from a really young age, and was kind of in awe with the swagger and the green and orange, and
Right.
kind of made it my goal to go there ever since. And my room in my parents' house was painted green and orange. So yeah, that was kind of, never really had like professional aspirations, and I was always kind of realistic with my skill set and size and all that, but always wanted to play college football and wanted to try to play at the highest level possible, and wanted to play at Miami. So I ended up working out, and great spot to spend a couple years at.
Oh, and I'm not going to argue that at all. Every time Josh and I have somebody on here that played football at a very competitive level, we got to ask, who was the one person that you played with, or you saw in person, or you happened to be on the sideline? Who was that one person that just blew your hair back? Like, holy shit, this person.
Oh man, there was a lot. I played with around 30 or so guys that spent some time in the league. I would say just from like an athleticism perspective, David Njoku was on another level, just effortless, didn't have to try and was still dominant. And, he's still playing today. Denzel. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's healthy.
Denzel Perriman. I got hit pretty hard by him a couple of times. Linebacker, Rashawn Jenkins at safety. Yeah. He's played for quite a while, made some good money. So there were a ton of guys, but those are a few that stand out.
Oh yeah, I think that I remember, or it'd be etched in the back of my mind for the rest of my life. I get smacked by Sean Perryman. So yeah, absolutely. Was Njoku? I'd have to think back. Obviously, at the U, was Njoku just the absolute like physical specimen freak that he is now, or did you just see it? Holy shit, this guy's got so much more that he's going to build upon.
Yeah, so he was national high jump champion coming out of high school. Like 7-foot high jumper, and I know his school kind of used him in all different ways. And he actually redshirted his first year. We had another freshman tight end, Chris Herndon, that he got drafted to, that played over David, and they didn't really know how to use David, and they put him at linebacker for a little bit, and then put him back, as kind of receiver, tight end hybrid, and didn't play his first year, and then really broke out as a redshirt freshman, and you kind of knew halfway through that year, this guy's probably gonna be a first rounder in a year or two. And, after his redshirt sophomore year was a first round pick, and kind of rest is history.
That's wild, man. That's wild.
Yeah. A lot of those guys, some people are late bloomers and kind of take a while, but a lot of them you can really see at least the athletic traits early on. Like, hey, they may not be developed all the way, and guys come in with different like football skill sets, but just like the size, speed, strength, like natural strength, a lot of that stuff shows pretty early.
Well, that's why I keep telling my ladies I'm a late bloomer. So
yeah, you're a long-term investment, man.
That's right. Yeah, I'm also a grower, not a shower. But Chris,
I caught just that last statement. Yeah.
Well, you knew that though. That's not surprising. Chris, did you have any other historical questions before we dive into this NIL stuff, or?
Before we dive into NIL stuff, I mean, hey, your college career comes to an end. Everyone knows it can't last forever. When was it, during your stint there at the U or what have you, that you thought, hey, maybe this would be something that I want to do for the rest of my life when it comes to, representation of talent or NIL or any of the sort like that? Did you have like early aspirations for that early on, or was it towards the end of your collegiate career?
I always thought it was an interesting space, but never really considered pursuing it until probably sometime in my junior year. My original plan was something in law or government or politics. I thought maybe lobbying, or thought maybe I'll move to DC and kind of get in that space. And then, as time went on, got more and more kind of turned off by, that whole industry. But loved contracts, loved like just learning regulations and how things operate. And didn't want to give up sports, but didn't want to coach either. Just I didn't really like that side of it. So I was trying to find a way to combine those interests. And again, being at a school like Miami, even though our teams weren't great when I was there, we had so much like NFL talent and kind of frontline talent that got exposed to that side of things a lot more, just seeing all these guys going through the pre-draft process and talking about their representation and things they liked and didn't like. And so I kind of latched on from there and thought, oh, this is something I could probably be good at. I had to be a film junkie just because I didn't have the size or athleticism. So I had to learn how to beat guys that were a lot bigger and faster and stronger than me. And so kind of took that approach, like I'm going to know the game and my clients better than, the scouts that are looking at them or, any other agents, that didn't play the game. And then on top of that, just really love contracts and learning that piece. And so that's how I ended up, pursuing this.
And I swear to God, last one, you said it, hey, you've got all this, everything around Miami, let's be real. And you've got all the previous talent. Who are some of those maybe UM alums or just that outside Miami, celebrity? Who are some of those individuals that might have come into the program or had to talk to you or this, that, and the third, or you saw on campus or whatnot?
Yeah, that was a really cool part about being at Miami was, one, it's a major city, so just a lot of people go down there, but then also a very strong, athletic alumni base that come back, work out, share a lot of knowledge. Frequently, Andre Johnson would be there, Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, Alex Rodriguez, although he's not technically an alum, but he was signed to Miami before deciding to, skip college but donated, the baseball stadium's named after him. And he was on campus every morning working out on the intramural fields at like 6 a.m. Saw him on the way to breakfast constantly. Pitbull made a couple of appearances. Flo Rida, Big Show was on the sideline for a game. So kind of a
Big Show.
Yeah, I was a big WWE guy back in the day too, so that was pretty cool to see him. So yeah, we saw people from all walks of life down there.
That's awesome, dude. I love I saw the Big Show in the locker room at Valpo when they were doing a house show, and I was like, So, hey, I do have an NIL question because you brought it up. You brought up Pitbull. So I heard a little birdie told me that Miami has either The Rock or Pitbull call like the heavy hitters in the transfer portal, and there were 5-star recruits. Like they don't how like Ohio State will have Zeke call or a football player, they'll have The Rock call, who obviously played football, but still, like, is that true? Is that?
I haven't heard that. It wouldn't shock me. I think it'd be smart. You'd pick up the phone and The Rock's on it, but I wouldn't put it past him, to be honest. But I can't confirm or deny it.
A little birdie told me that it actually worked too. Like, Ohio State and Miami were very similar NIL money wise. Again, this is all allegedly. And then the kid, the guy was talking to him on behalf of Ohio State, and I guess he was, hey, The Rock just called me. I'm going to Miami.
It's hard to turn that down. I don't blame him.
Dude, 18 high school seniors are so funny, man. I hear the same thing about Dion, bro, because everybody that I know that is associated with that program on the outside looking in has talked about how it's kind of I don't want to speak ill of it, but it's kind of like a reality TV show. So a lot of people are like, I'm not going to go there.
Literally, they've got their Amazon Prime show. I don't know if you've seen that.
Sure. So it's not super fun for a lot of those guys, because they're kids. They want to do kid stuff. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of kids will be like, no, I'm not going there. And then next thing I know, I'll be talking to them. They'll be like, yeah, Prime called me. So I'm visiting Colorado. It's like,
I had two transfer portal clients commit there on the spot. They were going to take all their visits, and suddenly they're locked in with Colorado after the first visit. So
it's crazy.
He's got some magic working over there.
Crazy to have that much power in your name. But Chris, did you have any other questions before we dive into?
No, let's. I want to definitely get into the actual NIL portion. I just want to get a little bit of your backstory. You're bringing it up, how you came into the craft and the trade. But no, go right ahead.
Well, I do want to piggyback on what Chris was saying. Well, as far as going out and getting clients too, you have to go out and call these guys, right? You
Yeah.
have to go and kind of do your own research and figure out, hey, this guy is a candidate. I'm going to call him and try to sell yourself as their agent, correct? They're not calling, very rarely are they calling you, right?
Correct. About 95+% is me having to do the outreach. Actually my highest earning NIL client this class came to me though. It was kind of out of the blue. So fair rarity, that doesn't happen often. And then on the NFL side, I'm trying to put it a nice way. Typically the guys reaching out to agents are the guys that don't have much of a shot. So, kind of take that how it is. But sometimes you get word of mouth, or, if you have a coach that, I've got a pretty decent coaching network just from, guys that ended up getting jobs like GAs and the quality control guys at Miami that have now, moved into positions elsewhere. So try to rely on some of those relationships as well here and there. But vast majority is me kind of doing my own, scouting and working, and then direct through, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, any means necessary.
And that makes sense as far as college goes. And like talk about the NFL, you and I have had discussions about guys who have fringe seventh rounder. I know that you also watch small time football like me, right? Watching a lot of Conference USA, Sun Belt teams like that. And but as far as like the NIL process goes, do you like watch high school film to get high school guys, or do you just pay attention to who enters the transfer portal, then call those guys, or how does it work in a college client?
Yeah, so I do pay somewhat attention to the high school recruiting, more so Indiana, just because I'm from there and I've got a lot of relationships with some trainers and coaches, and just like watching the state have success. So I follow a lot of those kids closely, and I live in Chicago now, so I'll pay attention a little bit to some of the schools out here, a little bit like Cincinnati, and got a lot of, Ohio is great in football. So I at least want to know who some of the names are coming up to, kind of have on my list for a couple years down the road. I haven't gotten into representation at the high school level yet. There's actually, I think majority of states now have NIL for high schoolers, just, from a monetary perspective, and unless you're representing like a top quarterback or, maybe a really top high end skill guy, it's not really worth the time effort at that stage. Something to look into though further kind of down the road, but it's really, I've backed away from some more of the traditional NIL outside of, trying to stay in with quarterbacks, but really more so like transfer portal. That's where a lot of like NIL really is now, even though it's not really traditional, name, image, and likeness. It's kind of the guys that we're working under, but it's the nature of the beast, and that's where most of the players are getting their money, is either transferring or getting, they're retained by their current school. So I mean, I do scout some guys that are younger, but I'm not trying to encourage people to go into the portal. It's, I'll have talks with guys that I think are NFL talents, and then sometimes I'll see a guy enter the portal that then I'll reach out to him, try to strike up a relationship and see if they're looking for representation. And the nice thing about this space, for both the athletes as well as an agent, is a lot of these guys might not be NFL talents, but they can still make a significant amount of money in college because they're good college players. And, as an agent, I can get paid on that. And then as a player, they can make, more money than they'll ever make doing anything else for a couple of years, and really set themselves up very nicely, for whatever plan B might be.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying about high school makes sense. I mean, I try to follow the space relatively closely. I'm kind of a memorabilia guy and trading card guy. You see guys like Juju Lewis sign, exclusive deals with Panini, and I think Julian Sands signed his deal in high school. I think Luther Burden's one of the only guys I remember, like skill guys, to sign a deal in high school. But I didn't know if you kind of had to work your way, like, okay, I got to reach out to this high school kid because eventually he's going to be a good college player. Because it sounds like you kind of have to do that at the college level so that you get to carry him in the NFL. But I guess that's not the situation.
It's starting to trend that there are more high school kids starting to get agents. A lot will have their parents just try to review anything, but I think that's the next phase that's going to become a real big thing over the next year or two, most likely. It took a little bit for the college guys to get agents. Like some like top ones would have them, but the majority didn't. And now it seems, at least like with the portal, I'd have to venture to say probably 2/3 to 3/4 had an agent representing them in the portal. Yeah. at least starting caliber, a starter leaving for another school, or maybe a highly recruited high school guy that was a backup at a big program leaving. So I think the high school phase is probably kind of next in line, a year or two away from, all your top like ESPN 300 kids or something, most of them having some type of representation.
Yeah.
Just because dollar amounts are as long as those keep growing. And now you're having the rev share going forward where, really a lot of guys, or most guys on the roster, are going to be getting some pretty decent money. I think it makes more sense for more guys to have someone, to review contracts and, just make sure that, one, from a negotiation perspective, two, just making sure they're not tying up future rights that, maybe looks good today, but affects them down the road that they're unaware of.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a good thing I want to bring up. But first, shout out to Jeremy. Thanks for joining us, buddy. That is actually the resident On It guy in my area. So big shout out to Jeremy. But you mentioned the revenue sharing. That's relatively new in the NIL space. I mean, right?
Yeah. Coming this summer, is when that'll take effect. So brand new. Now you have a lot of schools having like GMs or different titles for it, but basically roster and cap management is what it is. It's a whole new kind of industry, on that side of things. It's really starting to mirror the NFL model a lot more.
Well, so I got two questions there. One from a listener who sent it in before the show started. How NIL currently works, right, is that it's not the school giving. So Ryan Day in Ohio State isn't paying these players. It's the 1861 Foundation. It's these NIL collectives that are giving the money to these players, correct?
Until July 1st, then it's on the school's books. So it's kind of like, hey, like you're getting paid X amount from your collective. Now, some schools are going to have the collective still working in conjunction all the way through. Others are getting rid of the collectives and everything is going to be just on the school's books. So every school is going to be a little bit different in that regard, come July 1st when that takes effect. But yeah, as it stands today, it's, it's kind of an arm. You have your GM or director of player personnel. There are some schools where it is the head coach negotiating. But
really?
Yeah. So
is it smaller schools, or would I be surprised by how
there's a playoff team this year that the head coach is doing all of it? So I tell you off camera, but
you talking Sig? I could sniff out a Signetti reference there.
Hey, no comment. But yeah, in some of these, all the coaches know what their budget is, whether they're the ones actually having the money talks or not. They all know what they're working with the collectives. They'll talk to the collective. Hey, these are the players we want. What do we have available? How it goes.
Well, because my understanding of how it worked at Ohio State was basically, hey, this is the list of guys we're recruiting. Reach out to them, see what those numbers are. Mm-hmm. And then the collective goes out. They negotiate, do early a rough draft negotiate. They go back to Ryan Day and say, hey, here's your budget. These are the different options for what we can afford. Ryan Day basically circles the 5 guys that doesn't matter, and then the other guys are like, well, and
this makes sense, or this is the threshold we want to stay on for him.
See what you can do. But as far as what you're talking about with the revenue share, and Chris, I know you got a question. I'm sorry, man. I got one more on this topic before we move on. Is the revenue share that big of a deal? Because in my eyes, the collective, if you come to Ohio State, there's so much money being funneled in from advertisers, right? Like Jeremy, we talked about, On It. We talked about the multiple car dealerships giving out free, Bentleys basically, right? I know the guys sign autographs at Menards all the time. It feels like there's a lot of exterior money coming in there. So is the revenue share really going to be a huge difference, or is it just a different way to funnel the money? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Is the money going to change, or is it the same amount of money just funneled a different way?
I think for some schools it'll change, others it won't. And part of it depends on, hey, do they still want this external arm to be viable and have extra money to pour on top, or do they want complete control, no external noise whatsoever? So with the rev share, all the schools are going to have as it stands today, they're going to have their cap. I know there's legal battles on that about price fixing and there's still kinks to be worked out there. So on paper, it would be like an equal playing field, but I think your schools like the Ohio States are the ones that really get a lot of brand deals, have a lot of external buy-in, booster buy-in. I think they're going to want to keep that extra pot on the side with their collectives. If they're going to have to go out and spend several million on a quarterback or more, or whoever, top guy, pay Jeremiah Smith to return, that's going to eat up a big chunk of your rev share that you have set aside. So you're going to need some external dollars to, keep the talent on a loaded roster like that.
Yeah, and thanks, Jeremy, for the insight. So the 3 players that did the signs for Dick's Sporting was paid around $60,000 for a couple hours. I believe that Jeremy's pretty well connected in that space. That's a huge chunk of cash that you're probably only going to find at 3 universities. Maybe that's another question. That kind of cash to sit there for 2 hours. How many schools do you think you really get that at? What is?
I would probably under 10 schools. I would imagine, if that, maybe 5.
Chris. I don't. Before I ask another question, I know I saw your mouth open, so I don't want
No, I am weird. So, you brought up, 1 July, we've got this revenue sharing, and you brought it up a time or two, and it says, hey, it's on the books. When it comes to the terminology we're using here, on the books, it's saying, hey, university has this amount of money from said revenue sharing, and this is allocated for NIL deals, or what are we talking about when it comes to on the books for a university?
Yeah, so it'll be like on their profit and loss statements. The money will flow from the university. I want to say it's roughly 22 million. I forget the exact dollar amount, which is set aside for all sports.
That's what the athletic director, they're doing, is what they're doing for each university with that money.
Correct. So then most schools are going to typically allocate, I'm hearing from roughly 75 to 80% to the football program. Then men's basketball would be number 2, and then kind of trickle down from there, whatever, your Olympic sports and non-revenue generating sports.
Makes sense.
Football's going to get the vast, so roughly 15 to 17 million or so will be allocated for football. Now, a school doesn't have to go up all the way to that max, roughly $22 million number, but your Texases, your Ohio States, your Alabama, your big revenue, big budget schools, they're going to want to go up, fill that allotment, and then probably add on to that with their collectives, outside of the schools.
Why is that the number? Is that so? You're saying that's basically the cap? How is that? How is that the number?
See, I don't know how they came to that, but that's the big thing that's now kind of getting fought is, price fixing is what, they're going to have to get resolved. So that number may go away. It may be just no completely open market. It's crazy now. A lot of the Big Ten schools have said, like in their contracts, whether the House bill is what it's called, whether the House bill passes or not, we are going to be doing a revenue share regardless. So, I sent a guy to a Big Ten school this past year, or 2 guys actually, and seen some other Big Ten contracts, and they're all putting it in place. Like, hey, we are fully committed to doing this revenue share, whether the House bill passes as is, gets amended, or something completely different ends up coming to fruition.
And I'm cool with that, but I don't want to rant, because this is a show where we're trying to learn from you. But my issue with the cap theory, right? Because that was actually one of the listener questions before the show. It was like, hey, do you think there should be a cap? The question was related to parity. Like, is parity in college football gone? And my thought process was, this person was saying, well, there should be a cap so that parity remains the same. And my thought process is, what the fuck does it matter? Because even if there's a cap, like you said, there's going to be outside forces. So let's say Ohio State and, I don't know, pick Alabama. Let's pick those schools. Okay, I don't know Alabama's situations. I feel like I know Ohio State's pretty well. Okay, Ohio State and Alabama have a cap. All right, well, if you could go to Ohio State, you have a car dealership, you have a car deal, you have Dick's Sporting Goods giving you $60,000. Okay, and then you have locker rooms, theoretically, let's just say that the Woody Hayes is better than the Alabama's facilities. A locker room that has a fountain in it, a barber in it. The cap doesn't matter, right? Because I don't see. Is that the reason for the cap? Is because they're trying to make it more like the NFL where there is parity? Because I don't see how that even works, because there's so many outside forces within college sports that makes it non-existent. And that's how it was since before time. I mean, you went to a school because of the facilities and because of what they had. I mean, right? This is just a different way of paying your player, right?
The amenities, yes.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not really sure the reasoning behind it, or why they're justifying it. So that's a good question. I think one, just because everyone kind of knows, like, hey, this is going on. It is pay for play. Like, let's be frank about what it is. So let's just bring everything in house. Let's legitimize it. Let's have a salary cap. And some schools are having dedicated dollar amounts per position and having a GM. And I think just to like get rid of all the smoke and mirrors and the facade that's been put up, with all the, then you have your like shady boosters and people that are wanting full control. And I think just to bring the power back within the house, kind of first and foremost. But again, I don't know exactly why it's shifting that way, but I think the schools are just kind of wanting to be more hands-on. At least the power players within the sport are just wanting to have as much control over things as possible.
Again, I don't want to rant, but that sounds like lipstick on a pig, right? Like, we want to get rid of the shady boosters, but we're not going to get rid of the shady boosters, right? Like, it's like, it sounds so silly to me, but
it's a very imperfect. I'm happy the players are getting paid. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
But it is like very imperfect. There's been a lot of iterations so far. It's going to keep changing. And I mean, something, it needs to get cleaner than what it is. I know like the NCAA is kind of letting everything happen right now because they don't want to get sued. They're trying to fight for antitrust exemptions. And so, you're seeing stuff like the JUCO rulings, and then Wisconsin just got like former D2 transfer, just got an extra year because he couldn't make money when he was at D2. And so I think the NCAA is just kind of letting everything slide and letting the schools kind of figure it out as they go right now.
I hate that we have guys that are our age still playing college football, dude. We every week on this podcast, I talk shit about Dylan Gabriel for transferring 3 times, and he's got every record, every passing record. He's played for 30 years. Like, it's just.
I wish I could still be in college, man. I mean, I don't blame him, and he's probably getting paid more than he will in the NFL or close to it.
For
I don't know what his future prospects look like, but I don't blame the player. And Miami had like an 8th year guy or whatever it was, and
the tight end.
Yeah, I would do the same thing if I were in their shoes, but I don't like that they're able to do it though. I mean, there's got to be some cutoff, whether it's age or just amount of years. It's like, it's just tough luck, man. But
it takes away from college football has so little integrity left, right? From when we were growing up, we would watch guys that everybody was like you, right?
It was the purity of the sport, and
we've lost every day that goes by, we lose more of that. And 30-year-olds playing football, I think, it damages that. But back to the reader or the listener question, as far as parity in the sport, his question is, do you think that parity in college football is being destroyed? I disagreed, because this college football playoff to me was a good example of how it isn't destroyed, because you have these rich alumni that can now come forward and just give gobs of cash rather than the 5 SEC schools.
Look at Indiana this year, man. Like my parents went to IU, and I couldn't relate to it all growing up because they sucked so much. And one year you have the losingest program of all time in college footballs. There were only 2 losses of the 2 national, teams in the national championship. So I got the concern early on, and I thought it was going to be the rich getting richer. And but I think the playing field's leveled more than it has been in quite a while, at least since I was probably very young. Just, I'm tired of the Bamas of the world, taking over, and Georgias. And now you're seeing, Big Ten teams competing a lot more. And, look at Ohio State and the team up north last year. And so I think, again, you're going to have your blue bloods are always going to have some level of success just because they've had that machine rolling for so long. But I think you're going to periodically see a team like in Indiana or whoever, have, even if it's just a one-off, they, throw a bunch of money in one class or stars kind of align. But I think you're going to see more and more of that just because money talks to a lot of these kids. It's easier to reload. You don't have to rely solely on years and years of high school development, but you can plug those gaps in kind of overnight if you got a coach and a bankroll.
Well, and I don't necessarily think that, you mentioned the pay to play, and I completely agree with that, but I don't necessarily think that always equates to wins. I mean, let's use Miami as an example. Sorry.
Yeah, had a couple game day issues there.
Yeah, but that roster from top to bottom was arguably the most talented in college football, and a lot of it was because of the transfer, right? Martinez and Cam Ward, and they got the linebacker from Marshall had 1 million tackles. I mean, all those guys were very, very good, and they, were very underwhelming, right? So I don't think that that's the only thing that matters either. I think it's kind of picking the right guys and picking and choosing. We've had the conversation on here multiple times how Ohio State, Will Howard was not the first choice. And a lot of people think, oh, it was Cam Ward. It's like, no. Well, Ohio State had no interest in Cam Ward, and there was some reasons why. Yeah. So, the fit or whatever. But I guess that's that leads me to my next question as far as you said you never tell a kid to get in the transfer portal. You never urge them to do that. But how does that process work?
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy that just hits up a kid and hey, you want to enter the portal so I can represent you, because there are a lot of guys doing that, and I think it's kind of shady. Now, I want to build relationships, and if he asks hey, what do you think of staying here? What are the pros and cons? We'll walk through the scenarios. Because one, as an agent, I can still represent you if you're staying at school and help renegotiate at the school you're at.
Yeah.
So, and the grass isn't always greener. Plenty of guys transfer and it doesn't work out, and they take some short-term money and, sacrifice the long-term NFL money. So, everyone's a case-by-case basis. But, I want to be more so educate, hey, this is what the market could look like at your position. These are schools that I know are looking, so on and so forth. This is where you could probably fit in at certain schools. This is where you fit in at your current school going forward. You make the decision that's best for you. I'm here to be a resource, but I want to build a relationship, one, because you could be an NFL guy down the road, or two, I can still help negotiate if you're going to stay at school. So not trying to get guys just to enter the portal is because doesn't work out for everyone. There's a lot that get left in the portal and can't find a home, or end up just making a lateral move or having to go downwards because they kind of overestimated what their market was going to be. So as many good stories as there's a lot of bad stories too. And, if it's just not working out for guys.
Well, Chris, do you have a question? I've hogged most of his time. I'm sorry.
I got a couple actually. I'm not sitting here, Austin, to put you on, put you at the podium and make, have an official statement or a stand on it. Mm-hmm. But Josh said, we're getting older now, and we're men who are college football purists, and we're all about school tradition, and us being of Ohio, we want to see these Ohio kids stay in Ohio, this, that, and the third. If one of these individuals that say, hey, this NIL is ruining college football, one of these old heads in a sense, what do you have to say about that, being someone who represents, talented young men?
Yeah, it was definitely weird at first, and I think it's become a bit normalized. I don't think the money per se is ruining college football. I think one, the scheduling really needs to be fixed. With early signing day, bowl games, coaching carousel, portal window, all right at the same time. I think that's kind of the bigger shit show is, you've got coaches leaving, players entering the portal. You still have your bowl games where half the rosters play. So I think that's, first order of business is fix that a little bit. Let's finish the season out before having the portal window. Keep your commitment to your current school. Again, I'm all for the money. The coaches, some of these coaches are getting 10, 11, 12 plus $1 million a year. How much money's been spent on facilities and then revamped 5 years later when they didn't need it because they had to spend the money that they, had on the books. So I think the transferring every year piece, I think that needs to be fixed, whether it's maybe a one-time undergraduate transfer and then you get a grad transfer. I didn't like the old, like, hey, you transfer, you had to sit out. I think you should at least be able to move once. I don't think you should be able to leave every single year, though.
Right.
It gives the kids, bargaining power, which is, as an agent, sure, that's nice. But at the same time, it makes it tough to graduate because then you're chasing credits and things not transferring in that aspect. You still want continuity. Again, college football purist. I don't like completely like the revolving door. So I think those are some things that need to be fixed. I think for me, the bigger thing that I've really was turned off from the last couple of years is all the conference realignment and losing the regionality of college football, like the Pac-12 going away and
Right.
USC and Oregon and the Big Ten. And I think it was a fun season this year, but I don't like the whole, it's kind of turning into the AFC and the NFC and then, everyone else getting left behind. So I don't like two conferences having, more power than the others. I would rather have a little bit more, equal power as far as, how it used to be. So that's the one thing. The other thing that I would like to change, but I think the genie's out of the bottle there.
No, I'm wholehearted. My next question was something along the lines of that as well. But what's something that you think is almost on the verge, or it's at the desk of the NCAA? What's something that you think that should be, will be, or needs to be implemented to protect both the athlete and the university themselves?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is, are they employees? That's, the universities don't necessarily want them to be. I think collective bargaining is the next big thing that's going to happen. The NCAA wants to keep the antitrust. They're kind of hanging on by a thread, afraid to be dissolved by, just the Big Ten and the SEC going away from the NCAA. And so I think some type of collective bargaining where, you don't have like different laws in every single state when it comes to NIL. That's a mess as well. And then there's different like athlete representation laws in every state. And I think some type of completely equal playing field when it comes to that and regulation, what conferences can or can't do. I think that's probably the next phase. And, I don't know. That's a tough part too, though, because your golf team doesn't have the same, wants or needs or, as your football team. And so, is it just football that collectively bargains and not other sports? Is it revenue generating sports? What does that look like? That's above my pay grade. But I think some type of just more standardization. There's been a million, NIL type of laws that have been proposed, but all have gotten shot down in Congress because no one can agree there on what to do with this thing too. So I think everyone agrees like something needs to be done, but no one has the perfect solution or knows what should be done.
Well, as someone I was speaking to said that what they should do is they should allow them to sign multi-year contracts. Mm-hmm. So if you sign with Ohio State instead of just doing, the 1 year NIL deal, it's for 2-3 years. But I don't know if I like that either, because then we're kind of going back the opposite way where, they're still kids. If you go to college and you're unhappy, you do deserve the right to leave. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I kind of disagree with that too. But at the same time, you have so many people abusing the system. I can see the pros and cons of both of that. What do you think?
So the Big Ten, for one, has their own kind of standard contract going forward, and then they have their separate collective contract. So the parameters are a little bit different in each, but there are like payback provisions, in those contracts where hey, you leave during a certain amount of, you pay X amount back, kind of prorated depending on how many months you were there. Some schools are having like a lot of the money backloaded like after spring ball, so they make sure you don't get paid a bunch of money up front and then leave again.
Like Caden Proctor?
Yeah, exactly. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Or having like a huge kind of balloon payment like in December, January, making sure you're still on the bowl game roster. So that's something that some schools are trying to do to at least mitigate some of the, entering or sitting out the bowl games or going in and getting a paycheck. So, yeah, it's tough because I don't like you can leave all 4 years if you want to. At the same time, if you're a regular student, you can. Your credits might not transfer, but so yeah, that's kind of the double-edged sword. Is like you can't put the same, or you can't have restraints that regular students have or don't have, but at the same time, it's like I hate seeing guys on playing 3-4 schools and play for 6-7 years and all of that. So yeah, it's tough.
Do you think that this is another listener question? Do you think that the transfer portal is overall hurting the development of the players? We constantly hear the success stories like Will Howard or I love that. I can only think of Ohio State as Cam Ward. Guys like that who went on to transfer and risen their level of play and maybe their draft stock and yada yada yada. But there's a lot of horror stories out there, like Cade McNamara. Tate Martell was pre-transfer portal, but he transferred 85 times. There's a lot of bad stories out there that like not a lot of people hear. So do you think that overall the transfer portal is hurting the development of these athletes, or do you think it is helping them?
I think it helps from a monetary perspective because the players have a lot more power, so they can threaten to leave or just leave and test the markets. That perspective, I think, is great. I think from an on-field development, I think overall it probably hurts. I think it helps a lot of players get into a better situation, find a system that fits, what have you. But I think there's more players that are negatively affected that end up having to move down a level unexpectedly, or just don't, end up losing a scholarship altogether and kind of get lost in the portal. And then it hurts the high schoolers. Schools are taking less and less high school players because they'd rather reload with a 20, 21, 22-year-old, 30-year-old in some cases versus, having that last spot for an 18-year-old that is not ready to contribute for probably a couple of years in most cases. So, that's been a huge piece. That's less and less high school guys are signing at least Division I, and more guys are getting pushed down to D2, D3, NIL.
You really think so?
Yeah. Like a lot of schools are taking the smaller high school classes, and as a result. So I think that it kind of trickles down all the way there. So I would say overall it probably hurts. I think it really benefits the top a lot, but I think it probably hurts a good amount of kids that maybe the ones that aren't in it or aren't making money, but are, they're just because they want to play college football and get an education, and not always working out.
Well, the high school take you had is very interesting because I was talking to someone else who was in recruiting circles, right? And he was kind of saying the same thing. He's like, it's really hard for these high school kids because they're getting offers later than they usually would. And the amount of schools that would typically be interested in a kid like this has been limited. But in my eyes, I was thinking, well, that sounds like a good thing because you would get back in the day, schools would send out so many offers, right? And your list would be so long. Like this feels like, okay, if it's narrowed down for you, kind of who to trust, which coaching staffs to trust and stuff. Now, the example that I was given was like a kid that was, going to like a MAC school, but I didn't know that kids were getting forced down entire divisions. I guess, does that make sense? Because when I look at the recruiting classes of a lot of these schools, most of them, they're still taking 18, 20, 25 kids. And there's like, there are like 10, 15 schools that are like, nah, we're just going to like Louisville takes 30 transfers and then no recruits or whatever. Mm-hmm. I guess that's what my thought was. It was a good thing for some of these high school kids, but that's completely inaccurate based off what you're saying.
At least from what I've seen, like high school coaches I've talked to at some pretty decent programs that would send a lot of guys. They're sending less guys or talent, or players in their eyes that would be Division I talents aren't getting the same opportunities. As a result, just because the portal is getting larger and larger, and there's more of a pool there of guys that have been in a strength and conditioning program, and you kind of know what to expect, less unknowns. So easier to, yes, you still have to balance your roster. You still have to develop high school talent, but easier to pull a handful of guys from the portal than, take a risk on, a couple extra high schoolers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you think that the one AA, that the FCS level is going to be more like the minor leagues moving forward? I mean, I know Ohio State took 2 guys from that level, and one is going to play. One is 100%. Logan George is 100% going to play.
Yep.
Is that how you view that? How that's going to move forward?
Yeah, I think so. And you're seeing it like even at the MAC or just Group of 5 level, like a lot of those schools are getting
Matthew Sluka, right? That guy, guys like that.
Yeah, like there was a MAC receiver. I was talking to one of their coaches who got poached to a Big 12 school for, I heard it was over $800,000. So I don't know if this guy's an NFL talent or not yet. He's got another year, but that's kind of the thing is, hey, they develop a guy for a year or two, he stands out, and same at the FCS level, they move up. But then on the flip side, these Group of 5 FCS, they're getting guys moving down from the Power 4 level that maybe couldn't quite cut it or just wanted to get more reps. So maybe some more talent as far as like size, speed, athleticism, but just hadn't put it together on the field yet. So it's a flip side. They're losing their top end guys, but they're getting better recruits coming in than they otherwise would have. Just players moving down levels.
I like how you said 800,000, and you kind of said it like that's not even that much money. You know what kind of gross stuff I do to another man for 800,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just want to be very clear. We're talking about 2 different kinds of money.
It's insane amount of money. Yeah, and it gets higher for some of these programs. Just the dollar amounts, it's disgusting. I mean, again, I'm happy for the players, but it's kind of that's more than the rookie minimum for the NFL. So they put that into perspective.
Yeah, Chris, I think did you have a question there?
That was an IO to David here. David, how's it going, bud? No, honestly, I know we're getting close to the hour. I want to give us some time for some other things as well. But I don't want you to, if you don't want to get into specifics, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, you've represented a lot of individuals. Do you got that one feel good story, or do you have that one individual who was here and then just exceeded all expectations, and it just like it felt good to be able to represent this? And you have that good hallmark story, ask if you would, or you don't have to say the individual's name or anything.
Yeah, I had probably the toughest one from this class. He wasn't the one that made the most money, but it was probably the most rewarding. So an FCS player that I really liked him. He entered the portal. I'd never heard of him. Looked at some tape. Was like, oh, I like this kid. Let me reach out. The market ended up being super dry. Like, we were weeks, reaching out to schools. Ended up getting a couple G5 offers. Not much money, but he wasn't getting any money at his FCS school. So, hey, it was a big win for him. Suddenly, a P4 school with super big name new head coach offers, goes to take his visit. They're kind of putting the squeeze on him while he's there. And another P4 school across the country with equally as big of a name that's been in the spotlight last couple of years also offers while he's on his visit to School One. So, School One throws 6 figures at him. And again, life-changing money for a kid from his background, and School Two's trying to pay a lot more to get him to leave or take his other visit, and ends up going to School Two for his visit. And, School One chews me out, and we had some words and weren't happy that I let him take his other visit. But, I work for the players, and, long story short, he ended up signing with School One for 150% more than what the initial offer was. And, as he was in the airport leaving, his second visit out west, says, hey, I really want to, I liked it, but I want to commit to the school back east. It's closer to home. He's like, I'll take the original offer. And I said, okay, well, let me call them, and got 100,000 more than what the original offer was.
Here
and,
it is.
Then he signed. So it was nice for me because it was a negotiation with, a guy that's been at the very highest level. And so that was a cool win for me. And, the school wins because they get the player that they wanted, and the player wins because he gets a, significant amount of money for a 20-year-old who's in college. So that was a really fun, that that kind of happened really quickly all at the end after about a month of not much going on, thinking I made a bad eval and wasted my time and all that. So that was a pretty fun one for me.
That's vindication of all of it at the very
end. Yeah. So now he's going to get developed by one of the best coaches in football history. And, he gets to be close to home. So that was a fun one.
Oh yeah. And rapid fire question. Do you think these kids, when they sign, I keep saying kids, maybe just because I'm old, when these young men sign these deals, do taxes really come into fucking perspective for these kids with signing these deals?
I was actually surprised. I had several guys bring it up to me, hey, can you lay out like, hey, I'm school, X is offering me Y amount of dollars, but the school over here, like what's their, they're offering me more, but their tax rate's higher. Like what's the difference? So I ended up doing like a breakdown for, at least the guy. And I think going forward, that's probably what I should do for everyone, even if they ask. But yeah, I did have a couple ask like that were very in tune with it. And it was actually the guys that I didn't think would be as on top of that I was representing compared to some of the others. So it's funny, the players that cared the most about money were also the ones that were most in tune with the taxes. So I guess that makes sense, but
hell yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where you really get in trouble. So I think more schools probably need to educate and provide some of that stuff in-house or referrals to CPAs. But I think more players know what they're getting into from Uncle Sam's perspective, and a dollar's not really a dollar.
No, wholeheartedly. And the last one for me, big fan of the U. Give me your top 5 Hurricanes of all time. Go ahead.
Oh, geez, man!
Don't age yourself. Just tell us
who. Put me on the spot. Sean Taylor, Ed Reed. Oh man, Ray Lewis, Michael Irvin. One more, man. Jeez, there's so many good running backs, so many good. That's tough. There's a million guys I could say.
I was expecting an Edgerrin James or a Jeremy Shockey out of you.
I was thinking Yeah, I would say Edgerrin James, but I love Jeremy Shockey.
Or Clinton Portis.
He was up there.
Walter Payton Jr.
Stop it.
Jared Payton.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry.
Jared Payton.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Maybe Gino Toretta.
Toretto's good, yeah. Vinny Testaverde he should be up there.
Brock Berlin.
Yeah. 304, he was a big one.
Did you ever hear the story about Jeremy Shockey saving something?
How are you doing, bud?
No, I don't think I've heard that story.
Ben Hartsock tells the story. They were both playing for the Panthers at the time, and I guess some dude was choking on their lunch, at training camp, and Jeremy Shockey went over there and just like fucking hit him in the back, and then he went over, sat down. yeah, and then he went over and sat back down and started eating again. Everybody was like, "What the fuck just happened?"
I went out with him one time in Coconut Grove.
Hell yeah!
There, and that was a fun night. He was an interesting character. But
I bet that dude knows how to party, bro.
Yeah, good dude though too. Very very generous. But yeah, he was awesome.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. We had another. Oh, here you go. Here's another question. Have you had any like weird requests they had to be like, dude, no, like like the roadie in Wayne's World 2? You know what I mean? Where like, I have to have 7,000 white M&Ms. Like anything weird requests from these kids trying to go to different schools, you have to be like, dude, no, that's not. I
wouldn't say any weird requests. There were some school or some players that just like don't completely get how negotiations work and
love that.
Hey, what's so-and-so offering now? What are they offering now? It's like, dude, you haven't even visited yet. There's been like 2 days that have gone by. Like none of your visitors said. They're not just going to keep up in the dollar amount each day. Like that doesn't work. We got to leverage and let the process go. More and more kids are asking to have like cars involved, on top of the money. I know some schools or more schools are now offering like flights and hotels for parents and families. So that's becoming a little bit more popular, but yeah, I haven't had really anything like out of the ordinary though, but I'll be on the lookout to go into forward or let you know if I get any
there's
weird requests.
But there's rumors about like, oh, hey, can my girlfriend get a full scholarship? Can my girlfriend get a scholarship? That's been out there. There's been rumors that like these bigger schools when they're recruiting juniors, they're giving these juniors these parents stipends before they actually commit. I didn't know how much of that stuff was real or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but those are also the type of kids I try not to represent as much as possible. You can't avoid all the craziness in this industry, but I probably lose out on a decent amount of business just because there's certain shit I don't like putting up with, or personality types, I know I'm not going to mesh with. And, I don't want to be a babysitter at the end of the day as much as possible. You got to do it a little bit, but try to avoid that as much as I can.
You kind of, that story you told about the kids not knowing how to negotiate. Remind me of that scene in Family Guy where Peter goes to the furniture store. What, Chris, do you remember that episode where he's like, I'll give you $1. $7 million. Sir, can I know how to negotiate $1?
Yeah, it gets like that sometimes.
Yeah. I love. We bring up Family Guy way too much on this show. I think that was the last question that I got. Chris, do you have anything else?
Honestly, man, like I said, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on. I'd like to have you on again. Honestly, I'd love to have you on again here come the summertime. Maybe we'd have some finality on some of these laws or these changes that have come towards the NCAA and collective bargaining and revenue sharing and this, that, and the third. If you're willing to spend an hour with us, we'd love it.
I would love to. I had a good time. I love talking college football, and I'm definitely curious to see what happens over the next couple months, and would love to speak on that. But appreciate you guys having me on. And again, congratulations to your Buckeyes. I'm not an OSU guy, but I'm a Big Ten fan, and grew up in the Midwest. So anytime that we don't have an SEC champion, I'm happy.
Well, you're a fan of whoever pays you, right?
That's it. Yeah. I mean,
have you dealt with Ohio State at all yet? Have you had any negotiations with Ohio State?
I have. I've talked with a couple of their, front office guys, but just haven't had any guys that have worked out yet, or that they had an interest this year. So we'll love to send a guy. They've had a couple indie players on the roster, and again, I'm all for sending players to good schools. So
as far as reputation or being good being a team that's like I don't there's shady teams and there's teams that aren't shady. You would have no idea what Ohio State is on that spectrum as far as negotiating and reach out to guys in the transfer program.
I haven't heard any negatives, so I'll tell you that. There's schools I've heard negatives. There's schools I've dealt with negatives that I don't want to send players to anymore. Now, if a player has his heart set, like, hey, I love this school, like, I'm not going to prevent them from going there. But there's certain schools I definitely would not push a player to, or recommend, or try to reach out to, unless a player specifically say, hey, I'm really interested in so-and-so. So it's a two-way street, and there's been some schools that have pulled some shady shit, and word gets around, man. So the nice thing about this space is, what is there, like 134 or so D1 schools versus, there's 32 NFL teams. So it's a huge market. There's a lot more options. And so I think, schools are most schools are a little more cognizant, like, hey, we've got there's so many options out there. We don't want to burn bridges, and with agents, and most schools are pretty cool with working with us. There's some schools that don't want to talk to agents at all. And, I think those are ones are going to get left behind just because we probably have more say than we should, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast. You got to deal with agents in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, I agree with what Chris was saying too. We'll love to have you on, closer to the summer. Maybe we can try to make this a regular thing. Chris, I wanted to also make sure that you're aware. Austin and I go way back, dude. Way back, bro. We used to have a podcast together.
It's been a long time. Yeah. I was excited when you reached out to me, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Congrats on the kid. I didn't know about that. So.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
He said you want him?
Pops up, yeah. If anything pops up, dude, you reach out to me. We'll have you on, bro. We love it. We love talking. The NIL questions. We get probably more NIL related questions than anything, I'd say. So yeah, man. So definitely thank you, and definitely reach back out.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. I had fun and love to be back.
No, and we'll absolutely have you back. And where can we find you on your socials as well, Austin?
Yeah, Twitter, Pfenny, APFENNY, and then Pfenny3 on Instagram. And then, you can follow our agency, JL Sports. I think we're JL Sports 3 on Twitter and JL Sports Agency, I want to say, on Instagram.
Okay, we're gonna when we upload this on YouTube, we're gonna go ahead and drop those in the description as well, because I'm gonna need a little bit more fine details on the spelling and all that. But no, man, you've answered a lot. I feel like I'm a smarter individual now. I've had you on, so I greatly
Got to make everyone around me better, man.
Right? When I'm pulling it out of my ass, it's maybe have some viable information behind it. So no, I greatly appreciate it. I'd love to have you back on, man. Obviously.
Oh, we lose him?
We lost him again.
Perfect time.
It makes me feel so good when it's not me that drops the internet. Oh, Chris is back. Look at him.
I'm telling you, it's a storm on the West Coast, man. I don't know what's going on. But you said your family were Hoosier alums. Obviously, you went to the U. Do you want to divulge what college football teams you actively root for other than Miami? Are there any?
Yeah, I like IU. Again, it was tough growing up, but I always, there was always indie guys that I knew that played. So always wanted them to do well. So that was really fun year to watch them. It was kind of crazy to see the success they had. So I would say that's my second team. My sister went to Colorado, so been fun watching the Buffs for a while. And again, that was a team that kind of sucked when she was there, but cool to see what they've, the turnaround that Coach Prime has had there. So those are the teams that I follow pretty decently close. Purdue, I still want them to do well just because it's Indiana. There's a lot of Indiana high school guys go there. So not too many other, I watch a lot of Big Ten, watch a lot of Maction, during the week, but kind of consume a little bit of everything. Every college football Saturday, I probably have got like 3 screens going at once, and I'll watch FCS ball. I'll watch a little bit of everything. So I'm a connoisseur.
Purdue's going to be good here soon. They made the right hire with Barry Odom, so that'll be
I like that hire. He's been solid. So I thought Walters would have worked out, but it's tough. Yeah, first head. I think he's a great D coordinator, but just kind of in over his head as a head coach. So Odom's proved himself.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for another client, definitely check out the OU quarterback Parker Navarro, dude. That dude is a baller.
I'll take a look.
maybe he's already represented. I'm not sure.
Might be, but yeah, I'll take a look. Appreciate it.
Well, I say that Josh and we bring people on. They've also got some foot in the door when it comes to college football or athletes, this and that, the third. Being an IU fan, we're kind of forming our own little podcast Infinity Gauntlet here. We have a Big Ten fantasy draft coming up here in a couple of months. If that's something you'd be interested in as well, we've got room, we've got spots. So.
Are you allowed to do shit like that?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
Good question. I haven't done fantasy since I was little, but let me look into it.
Is this something you purposely not dipped your toes in the water on?
Kind of both. I think one, it's just I'm so busy that it's a lot of work, and then two,
I'm so important. I can't do fantasy football. We get it. Jeez.
Yeah. And two, probably try not to get in trouble.
Forget I say it. Redact it all.
I'll follow your teams though.
There it is.
I'll tell you who to draft.
But again, this has been. Am I frozen again?
No, you're good.
Dude, you're good. We can see you shaking your head dismissively. Oh, he's frozen.
Now he is.
He's definitely frozen up. All right. Well, this is. I guess I'll close it out. Oh, Chris, are you back, Chris?
What an absolute nightmare! But this has been the Ohio State of Mind podcast. I am Chris. You can find me on X at CRain15. Josh.
Yeah, follow me on X at JoshKeatley16. Next week, we know that Ohio State legend Jim Carsados has recently passed away. God rest his soul. Great individual, great human being, great quarterback. Doesn't get enough credit for what he did for the Ohio State passing game when he was throwing it to Mike Lanese and Chris Carter. Only the second quarterback in Ohio State history to throw for over 2,000 yards a season. We're going to dive in more to his career, his great career next week. But I did want to at least, bring it up on our podcast that a Buckeye Gray has, passed on.
Yeah, we've got a nice little chunk set aside for Jim Carsados next week. We're getting a lot of comments and buzz about everybody wanting to say what they really think about Matt Patricia and the defensive coordinator for Ohio State now. So that'll be there next week. But we'll be here next week. Austin, we're going to go ahead and drop all of your links as well in the description. And again, very, very much so. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, just message me your social security number whenever you have time.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, this has been the Ohio State of Mind podcast. We will see you again next Monday. Same time, same YouTube channel, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.